Today we're going to be doing wood burning with our Cricut. So we are going to use our Cricut to wood burn on a cutting board. We're going to create our very own Santa tray, but we're going to be using torch paste. So we're going to be using the Cricut Smart Stencil so we don't have to use a mat. We're going to let our Cricut cut it out and then we're going to use that torch paste. Now today I'm going to be using my Cricut 10x12 heat press to do this, but you could definitely use a heat gun, and I may have to come in and use a heat gun if it doesn't do the job all the way through, so we'll find out. All right, so I've got a cutting board here that I actually found at the Dollar Tree for $5, so you guys know they've got a variety there. So I found this at the Dollar Tree for $5. The one thing that you want to make sure you do is if you find one that has varnish on it, make sure that you take a sander and sand that off, because it will not work with any sort of varnish on it. So this one right here feels pretty rough, so I think it's going to be good to go. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to head on over to Cricut Design Space. We're using this file right here. The very first thing that I did when I brought it in was welded it, so that way it was one file, because I'm not changing the colors or anything like that. So we're going to go ahead and change that size. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a tape measure here and figure out about how big I want this to be. So I'm thinking around 14 inches and no bigger than 11. So let's go and start there. Let's do 14 inches wide. We're going to come up here, hit the width, hit 14, enter, and that's going to give us 11 inches high. So I think this is going to be pretty good. I could also do the unlock if I wanted to, and I could carefully slide that up just a little bit if I feel like I'm just a little bit close to that 11 inches where I want to be comfortably. So I'm happy with this. We're ready to go. We're going to go ahead and hit make it. Now I am using the Cricut Explorer 3 model, so I am able to use the smart materials without a mat. You can do this with your Maker 3, your Cricut Joy if it's a smaller project, obviously. But if you guys are using your regular Cricut Explorers or your older makers, you can definitely use your 12x24 mat if you have a bigger area like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose without the mat. We're going to hit confirm, and then I don't need to mirror anything. We're going to be good to go. I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. I'm going to go ahead and go to browse all materials because we want to look at those smart materials. So I'm just going to type in smart, enter. It's going to bring up all of the smart materials that are available, and we are using the stencil, so we're just going to choose smart stencil right here, and then we're going to hit done. So we're completely ready. I've got my material here, and they do make this. I really do like their new stencil material, honestly. It's going to be super easy to remove it from this board. You can purchase this in the rolls for your regular Explorer models, as well as like an Explorer 2, your Maker, and all that stuff. So you can get them that are not smart. And you can also cut smart materials on the mat, honestly, as well. All right, here we go. So all we simply have to do is load this. I could trim it down if I want to. I'm just going to kind of leave it on the roll here. And so I'm just going to feed this guy underneath the feet. So what's really nice, if you guys are not familiar with feeding this without a mat, you guys can definitely do that, because with a smart material it's like 13 inches wide, which allows it to do so. Now I have read or seen that you can trim down other materials like that, so if you want to put that to the test, you definitely can. So what the Cricut is going to do first is it's going to take in your material. It wants to make sure that there is enough before it starts the job, and I like that as well, so you don't get somewhere and then it's out of room. So now we're going to go ahead and hit go. Now the other cool feature with using it without the mat with the smart materials is it cuts so much faster. So you guys are going to see that take off in just a second, and it is just so fast the way that it cuts. So if you guys are looking into the holidays and you're trying to figure out what die cutting machine may be best for you, definitely take a look into it and figure out, am I going to use the smart materials? Am I going to be wanting to cut without the mat? If not, I really honestly think the Cricut Explorer 2 is still an amazing machine. So like I said, this is going to go ahead and cut out, and then we'll be right back. All right, so we are completely done. If you guys actually have the roll holder, that is an extra attachment for this. For one, it'll hold it, but you can see I was totally fine without it. But it does have a built-in paper trimmer. So from here, before you unload it, you could go ahead and quickly cut that. But honestly, I'm just going to go ahead and unload it here, and then take it over here and just cut it with a pair of scissors. Now I'm trying to make sure that I leave enough room for my paste, because I want to make sure that there's enough border all the way around my stencil, so that way I don't get any paste on my board. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to remove the pieces that we would normally keep. So whenever you create a stencil, you're going to remove, like I said, just as simple as removing all the pieces you normally would keep, and that's going to create your stencil. It is so easy. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this process up. And as you guys can see with this stencil vinyl, it really does weed out very nicely. I'm not losing any of the pieces. I say that and then it'll happen, but it does weed out very nicely. So now we have our stencil ready to go. You can see how all those pieces are popping through now. I did lose a tiny little piece of the A here, the K, and all that stuff, but I'm totally fine with it. So now what we're gonna do is take a piece of transfer tape and pick this up so we can put it on our cutting board. Now the one thing that I have found really weird with the Cricut materials is that if you use their transfer tape, it works a whole lot easier picking it up. I don't know what it is, they designed them together and it just works so good. Now if you do have another brand that actually does work really well with the Cricut brands, let me know if you guys have not had any difficulty, or let me know if you guys are in the same boat. So first things first is I'm going to move that cutting board. I want to make sure this is a nice flat surface, and then we're just going to go ahead and get one side of this ready to go. If I can do it, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and just start off by peeling this top piece right here. And then I'm just going to kind of fold that over just a little bit. And then we're going to go back over here and try and get this down. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a pull and push. So I'm pushing and then pulling, and that way it's going to cover the entire thing. There we have it. So we're going to go ahead and take our squeegee here, and then we're just going to go ahead and rub this so that way that transfer tape will pick it up. Now you can definitely use like a removable vinyl. I use permanent all the time and it works just the same as well, but I do like the tack on this transfer or stencil, if you will. All right, there we go. I'm actually gonna go ahead and trim some of this up so I don't have so much excess. Now, like I said, I am leaving myself a border so that way my paste doesn't get out there. So I'm just leaving enough to work with, and then everything else. Trying to keep those lines straight so I know it's gonna be straight on my board. So we'll get a little bit off the top. Right, and I think this is pretty good over here. I'm just going to straighten it up. All right, here we go. So now we're going to flip this guy over and peel. The one thing about Cricut materials is that the backing is so thick. But what I like to do is I save these for paint palettes. I set them aside and I do use them. So I'm going to go ahead and peel. If anything tries to come up with you, just go back and push it down. All right, so I went ahead and trimmed off a little bit of that just so I could get a better grip. Like, I have a little bit of arthritis in my hands, so if you're somebody that does have arthritis, you may struggle with that as well. So I probably would recommend just sticking with, you know, Starcraft, or their removable or their permanent. And I would highly recommend the matte. All right, so now that we have our stencil, I'm going to carefully line this up on our board. You could definitely do the parchment paper hack where we line that up carefully. So just kind of got this here. I eyeball both sides. I think I'm pretty happy with it, so I'm going to go ahead and get it down. So at this point, we're going to rub it into the cutting board. All right, so what I'm going to do now is remove my transfer. All right, so now that I've got that peeled off, I'm gonna go through here and just put everything back down. Now I will say, because I've used that stencil material a few times, but on different types of materials. With this wood, it was a really weird to let it go, so I definitely keep that in mind. I do like the way it's going to lift, which you guys will see here in just a little bit, but we wanna make sure that everything is smooth, because if there's any way that the this gel can get underneath here, it's gonna make it a flop. So I'm gonna go ahead and go through and fix everything. All right, so you guys know I'm here to teach you, so learn from my mistakes. With this stencil material, I would not do it on a cutting board like this. It definitely doesn't want to really stay flat, which is going to cause some of this to go underneath. So I'm going to be very careful and try not to. So for the areas that's kind of bubbled, I'm going to work from the opposite way of that. Instead of pushing it underneath there, I'm going to work away from it. And so I'm going to try to work my way pretty quickly. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take some of that torch paste here. I've got this squeegee. I found these on Amazon. So we're just going to go ahead and go in here like so. Just get you some, and then we're just going to work our way to cover the entire board. Like I said, any of those areas that there is bubbles, I'm just going to work my way away from them. So you just want to cover. You can see where it's covering because it's turning orange. So we're just going to go ahead and continue to do this all the way around the board. All right, so you're just gonna go ahead and scrape any excess back inside of here. I'm gonna go ahead and go wash my hands really fast. I would highly recommend wearing gloves with this stuff, so don't do as I do, but I'm gonna go ahead and wash my hands and we'll be ready to peel this off and get ready to press it. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and peel. You don't need to let it set or anything like that. You can go ahead and start peeling everything. So same thing, you may wanna have your gloves because there is stuff that's all over this. So we're gonna carefully just peel everything off. So as you guys can see with that stencil, this is why I like it, is it does peel up very nicely. So I don't have to sit here and mess with trying to pull up all that adhesive. So if you guys can fiddle with it, it's worth it, but it is gonna be a hot mess. I'm just gonna tell you guys right away. We're ready for our final step, which is going to be doing the wood burning process. So there's a few different ways you can do this. You can use a heat gun, so that will take some time. It's one of my favorite ways to do it. If you guys want to see that method, we have videos here on the channel, so definitely check those out. But we are going to be using the Cricut Easy Press. You can also use your bigger heat presses as well. We're going to set it at 400 degrees, and then we're going to do this in around 15 to 20 second intervals, all right? So what we're going to do first is dry down that paste. So hovering above it, we're just going to stay hover, don't touch it at all. We're going to dry down that paste. So before you officially press, you could use your heat gun for this part because it will be pretty quickly, or even a hair dryer just to speed it up, or even just let it set aside until it's completely dry. All right, so that's pretty dried down for me. I think I got a few spots here, but I'm gonna roll with it. Another great thing for this would be your little mini iron. That would be a great project for it. All right, so we're gonna cover this with parchment paper, butcher paper, and then we're going to press. So I'm going to press this side first. I'm just gonna do my own little counting here. You could definitely use your timer if you want to. So we're just gonna go ahead and press that. And then I'm going to scoot it over and I'm going to press this side. Now keep in mind that if this is not 100% flat, you may want to come in with that smaller one, or just kind of finalize it with your heat gun because it's going to miss those. So if you got a little bit of dip, which I may possibly have, and like I said, we'll check that out here in just a bit. All right. So we'll come back to this side. I can already see that starting to happen. I think I'm going to swap out for my little mini one, and then we'll also switch for a new piece of parchment in between. I'm actually going to turn it and we'll try it this way and just see if that kind of helps out. Also, make sure you guys are in a well ventilated area. All right, so let me go ahead and recap. So my board here, hopefully you guys can see that a little bit. It's got a little bit of play in it, so it's not 100% smooth. So this area is working great. So I tried a little mini one, but it just didn't get up to that 400 degrees, so it wasn't working out. You could definitely come in with a heat gun, but I really wanted to try to accomplish it with this. So I'm at 400 degrees. I'm going to move it around. So I'm actually going to go ahead and hover my board over this. So I'll just come over to these pieces here, and then we're gonna hold it down. I don't have a timer because I'm doing in my head around 15 seconds. If you need one, you can definitely push it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and speed this up and work my way all the way around the board. All right, so as you can see, we just have a little bit right here. It's looking so, so cool. So I'll kind of bring it up here so hopefully you guys can see that here. But I'm gonna go ahead and take my heat gun just to finish out this piece right here because it's just not flat enough for me to use that bigger heat press. So with this, I like to let my heat gun kind of heat up for a little bit like this, kind of holding it off, let it completely heat itself up, and then you're just gonna hover around. Don't get too close. We're just gonna go ahead and hover it around. As it starts to change, move yourself around, or you can scorch the board. Now you can do these layers as dark or as light as you want to. So you guys can see that a little bit here and there, we can go back and actually sand those out to really make that look a lot more crisp. But there we have it. So we've actually done wood burn with our Cricut. So I really wish that I could have accomplished this all with just the big heat press, but it definitely had some bend in it, which I think there was some moisture in the board. But I definitely think you'd have more success if you were to use a bigger heat press with that and get it with 1 to 2 presses and completely get it. You may have to go back and do a little bit with the heat gun there. But once again, if you end up with any of this stuff here, you can go back in with a sander and clean all of that up. Now that I have a sander, it has been a few days later. I got myself a sander here. Let's go ahead and sand this down. So what we're gonna do is lightly sand this so that way we can remove some of this to really make it look gorgeous. So these little sanders here, they're almost like a little foam pad. You can find these locally, Walmart, Amazon, wherever you name it, you can usually find these at your local hardware store. And I just got a fine one here. So I'm just going to go ahead and go across this entire thing. So hopefully you can see so far, see how much clearer this is coming in here. So it's just going to take out this part right here, and it's going to just make it absolutely perfect. And you're gonna go over everything, so don't be afraid. And I'm very light. I'm not shoving or pushing into this at all. I'm being super light-handed. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep going. Every so often, you're gonna wanna stop and dust this off and then keep on going. All right, so far you can see how much better this guy is looking. It's looking so much better. You can really see that lighter color of wood. Now keep in mind, mine has some different colors of the wood going in here. So yours may too. Like for example, hopefully you can see those there, some of these grains here. So those will stay a little bit darker. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in and just fine tune a few areas. And there you guys have it. That's pretty much as good as I'm going to get this one. I do think, I want to go back and look at the beginning of the video. I think this entire strip here, it seems like it is darker. That's where I'm getting some of that there. But I think it looks so much better. And there you guys have it. Take yourself just a little cheap sander like this and then clean up that board. Now there is several different ways that you can actually seal this so that way you can use it to cut on it. There is mineral oils and all of those things. So you guys can definitely look into how to cure or seal, if you will, a cutting board so that way you can use it. So if you're not going to be using it, it's just going to be a display piece. You could go over this with like a Krylon matte or glossy spray if you wanted to, like a clear coat, and that would help shine that up as well. And that's it. Like I said, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the like button down below and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.